She was only 6, shivering in the snow, gripping her sister's hand, like it was the last thing holding her to the world. He was just a tired single dad on his way home from a late shift until he saw them huddled in the alley. And everything changed. What one of those girls whispered next didn't just break him, it brought him back to life. Because sometimes the most unexpected voices carry the notes of a miracle. If you believe in second chances and quiet love stories that begin when everything seems lost, you're in the right place. Go ahead, hit subscribe and tap the bell. That way, you won't miss the stories that speak to your heart. Just like this one. Now let me take you back to the night it all began. The snow had been falling since early evening, blanketing the small Montana town in silence. Streetlights flickered through the haze, casting long, lonely shadows across empty sidewalks. Owen Callahan hunched behind the wheel of his aging pickup, the heater wheezing as it struggled to cut through the chill. He rubbed his calloused hands together and took a sip from his thermos, lukewarm coffee. Bitter and too strong, just the way he liked it. He was supposed to go straight home after locking up the library, but something tugged at him. A heaviness in his chest, familiar but unplaceable, like the echo of a memory. He turned down a narrow back road near the outskirts of town, the kind of place no one had reason to drive through at night. The truck's tires crunched over fresh snow. He slowed as he passed an alley. Something caught his eye. A shape movement. He shifted into reverse. There. 2 small forms huddled against a brick wall, barely visible in the swirling white. Owen's breath caught. He threw the truck into park, grabbed his coat from the back seat, and flung open the door. "Hey, hey," he called, boots sinking into the snow as he approached. "Are you hurt?" No answer. Just the wind and the whisper of snowflakes against fabric. He knelt beside them. 2 little girls, twins by the look of it. No older than 6. One had her arm wrapped protectively around the other. Their cheeks were flushed red, lips blue snow clinging to their lashes. They were wrapped in a thin, damp blanket. No coats, no hats, no adults in sight. Owen's heart thundered. "It's okay," he said, gently shrugging out of his heavy coat and wrapping it around their tiny bodies. "I've got you. You're safe now." The smaller girl stirred, blinking up at him. Her lips moved, barely audible. What was that? He leaned closer. She whispered, "Mom said, if we ever hear the music again, follow it, and he'll find us." Owen froze. "What music?" he asked, barely above a breath. The girl's fingers trembled as she mimed playing piano on her sister's sleeve. The one that ends like crying, but still has light. A chill that had nothing to do with the weather surged down Owen's spine. He knew that music. He had lived with it, slept beside it, lost it. It was the unfinished lullaby his late wife had written just weeks before her passing. A melody she never titled, never performed, a piece so personal, so raw, it had remained locked away in his mind, and memory heard by no one else. He gathered the girls into his arms and carried them to the truck, laying them carefully on the back seat. One of them whimpered. The other held his wrist as if afraid he'd disappear. "I'm taking you to the hospital," he said. "You're going to be all right." The drive to St. Luke's Medical Center felt both eternal and instant. Nurses rushed them inside, warmth and light swallowing them whole. Owen stayed through the intake, answering what he could, which wasn't much. The girls had no identification, no known relatives. They were malnourished, frostbitten, and miraculously alive. He sat outside the exam room, his heart pounding in his ears. That whisper, that melody. He hadn't played it in years, hadn't dared. But it was unmistakable, and somehow they had heard it. He stared at the snow melting off his boots, his thoughts swirling as wildly as the storm outside. "Mr. Callahan," a nurse called. He stood instantly. "They're stable. Still weak, but no lasting damage. They'll be monitored overnight. Do they remember anything?" he asked. The nurse hesitated. One of them mentioned a name. Claire. The breath left his body. Claire Winters, his wife's younger sister, missing for years, gone without a trace. She'd been the fire to Evelyn's quiet steadiness, a gifted pianist, a fierce protector. But after a toxic relationship and a series of breakdowns, she'd vanished. And now these girls, the lullaby, the name, something deeper was unfolding here, like the first notes of a song long forgotten. He looked through the small window into the hospital room. The two girls lay side by side under thick blankets. One clutched the edge of his coat, like it was the only anchor she had left in the world. Owen's chest tightened. He felt the familiar ache of grief, the hollow space Evelyn once filled, and something else too. A flicker. A beginning. The hospital room smelled faintly of antiseptic, and something sweeter, vanilla maybe from the hand lotion the nurse had used. The walls were a soft seafoam green, the kind chosen to make people feel safe. But Owen Callahan, standing silently in the corner, with his hands shoved deep into the pockets of his flannel jacket, didn't feel safe at all. He felt like the world had cracked open and was offering him a puzzle he didn't ask for, but somehow couldn't ignore. The girls had fallen asleep again. The taller one, he'd heard the nurse call her Lily, was curled up facing the wall, thumb tucked under her chin. Her sister Hazel clutched the edge of Owen's jacket like it was a lifeline. They were strangers, but they weren't. Not anymore. Owen sat down slowly in the chair by the bed, careful not to wake them. He exhaled and leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes locked on the quiet rise and fall of their small chests. "You two fell out of the sky," he murmured, "and somehow you landed right in my life. It wasn't just the lullaby. It wasn't just the name Claire. It was the way Lily had squinted at him like she was trying to remember him from a dream. It was the way Hazel's voice had wavered when she whispered the phrase, 'He'll find us.' Something deep inside him stirred. Something he hadn't allowed to live in years. Responsibility that came from the heart, not duty. Not since Evelyn. The door clicked softly. A woman in a gray cardigan and a clipboard walked in. Marta, the child protection officer. She had the calm, direct tone of someone who'd seen too much, but still believed in fixing what could be fixed. "Mr. Callahan," she said. He stood. "Just Owen's fine." She nodded and lowered herself into the chair beside him. "The girls are stable. They'll stay here for at least 24 hours. After that, they'll need placement." Owen stared at her, already dreading what she might say next. "They have no records on file," she continued. "No known guardian. We're reaching out through national databases, but so far no hits. It's likely they were off the grid for a while." Off the grid. With Claire, he cleared his throat. "What would it take for me to take them in, just until you figure out where they belong?" She looked at him surprised. "You're not related." "I might be," he said quietly. "Their mother might have been my sister-in-law, Claire Winters." The clipboard paused midair. "I don't have proof," he added quickly. "Not yet. But I knew her. My wife Evelyn was her sister." Marta narrowed her eyes, slightly professional but intrigued. "That would change things, if we could verify the connection. I'm willing to do whatever paperwork is needed. Home check. Background the works." She studied him for a moment, as if trying to peer beyond the lined face, the tired eyes, the steady voice. While he looked back at the bed, where Hazel shifted in her sleep, murmuring softly, "Because no one should go through what they've been through alone," he said. "And because I think I was meant to find them." She scribbled something on her clipboard. "All right, Owen, I'll start the process." By noon the next day, the storm had passed, leaving the world iced over in quiet beauty. The hospital released the girls into Owen's temporary care, with nothing but a plastic bag of donated clothes, 2 hand-knitted scarves from the nurses, and a social worker's card with a meeting date. They rode in silence most of the drive. Owen didn't ask questions. He didn't want to scare them. He wanted them to breathe first. When he pulled into the long gravel driveway of his cabin, Lily looked up. "Is this your house?" she asked. "Yeah," he said. "It's not much, but it's warm. And there's soup inside." Hazel's eyes widened. "With carrots," he smiled. "Plenty of carrots." Inside, he helped them out of their coats, offered socks too big, and ladled out bowls of chicken noodle. The girls sat side by side on the couch, knees pulled up, watching him with wary eyes. He kept things gentle. He let them explore at their own pace. That night, he pulled out a photo album and sat at the table alone. He turned to a picture of Evelyn smiling on the porch wind and her hair guitar in her lap. Claire stood beside her, barely 20 eyes full of mischief and rebellion. Was she still alive? If she was, did she know where her daughters were? Did she leave them behind or lose them? Owen closed the album and stared into the fire. Later, he found Lily sitting on the stairs, clutching a small music box she'd pulled from her coat pocket. She opened it slowly, and a tinny broken melody spilled out. His heart stopped. The same tune. Evelyn's tune. "You know this?" she asked softly. He sat beside her. "I do," he said. "My wife wrote it." Lily looked at him carefully. "Then I think you're the one she meant." It was just past 5 in the morning when Owen woke to the soft, uneven tapping of piano keys. For a moment, he lay still in bed, not sure if he was dreaming. The sound was hesitant, 2 or 3 notes at a time, like someone trying to remember something long forgotten. He sat up, the chill of the wooden floor meeting his bare feet as he walked quietly down the hallway. In the dim light of dawn, he found Hazel seated on the old upright piano in the corner of the living room. The same one Evelyn used to play every evening, back when the house was full of life music and the smell of bread rising in the kitchen. Hazel's small fingers hovered tentatively above the worn keys. She wasn't playing a full song, just a phrase, a single haunting sequence of notes repeated in a loop. Owen knew that melody like he knew the lines on his own hands. It was the unfinished lullaby, the one Evelyn never named, never completed, the one she played for him late at night when the chemo kept her awake. She used to call it the song with no end. Hazel stopped abruptly when she noticed him standing behind her. She shrank back on the bench, eyes wide with guilt. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to touch it." "No, it's okay," Owen said, gently stepping closer. "You're not in trouble." She hesitated. "Mom used to hum it when she braided our hair, but I only remember a little." "You remembered it just right," he said, his voice catching. Hazel blinked. "Did you teach it to her?" "No," Owen said. "She taught it to me. Evelyn was my wife." Hazel studied his face for a moment, as if connecting invisible dots. Then, "You're like family." The word hit harder than he expected. "Maybe I am," he murmured. Later that morning, Marta, the child protection officer, returned for the home inspection. She walked through the house, slowly, clipboard in hand. Owen had spent the last 24 hours preparing scrubbing floors, buying bunk beds, organizing Evelyn's old teaching materials into labeled boxes. It was the most purpose he'd felt in years. Marta paused at the piano, her expression softening. "They said you were a musician." "Used to be," Owen said. "Evelyn and I wrote music together. I gave it up when she passed." And now he glanced toward the kitchen where the girls were drawing quietly at the table. "Now, I'm remembering." She nodded, taking notes. "There's a preliminary hearing in 2 weeks. It's likely the girls will stay here until then, unless any biological family is located." Owen swallowed. "What if I told you I have reason to believe their mother is Claire Winters?" Marta looked up sharply. "I know that's not confirmation," he added. But I have photographs, letters, a connection to both girls. I'm trying to find proof. I need time." Her eyes softened a little. "That's something the court will consider, especially if the girls are bonding with you." "They are," he said, quieter now, "and I with them." That afternoon, Owen pulled out Evelyn's old teaching journals. Dozens of them. She had been meticulous in her process, documenting every student, every song, fragment, every idea. In the last journal dated only 2 weeks before she died, he found a note scribbled in pencil. "Claire, if you ever hear this melody again, follow it home. I'll be waiting." There was no address, just the melody's notes drawn carefully on the staff, the same ones Hazel had played that morning. Owen sat back, stunned. Evelyn hadn't just written a lullaby, she'd written a message. That night, Lily came to him with a folded paper. "We found this in Mom's old coat," she said. "You should see it." Owen unfolded the paper carefully. It was a torn scrap from a journal written in blue ink, the handwriting slanted and hurried. "If something happens to me, if I forget, please tell them about the cabin by Bitterroot Lake. The music will know the way." Claire. The cabin. Bitterroot Lake. Owen's mind raced. Evelyn and Claire had spent childhood summers near that lake. There were dozens of cabins there, old half-forgotten vacation homes. If Claire had returned to one, it might explain how she vanished from the system. No phone, no records, no visitors. Hazel tugged on his sleeve. "Will we find her?" Owen looked at her, really looked into those deep searching eyes that carried more grief than a child should know. "Yes," he said. "We'll find her. Together." As the girls went to bed, Owen sat once more at the piano. He placed his fingers gently on the keys. It had been so long. His hands were stiff, his memory rusty. But the moment he played the first 3 notes of the lullaby, something inside him gave way. The melody was simple, just a few bars. But within them were Evelyn's voice, Claire's pain, and now these 2 little girls searching for home. For the first time in years, Owen began to play again. And this time, he wasn't alone. The days that followed settled into a kind of gentle rhythm, uneven quiet, but unmistakably warm. Snow still lined the edges of Owen's front porch, but inside the house felt different. Less like a relic and more like a home. Lily and Hazel adapted quickly to the small routines of Owen's World Cocoa, in the morning shared books in the afternoon, and music, always music, drifting softly from the living room, where the upright piano had come back to life. Owen noticed the small things first. How Lily would automatically fold her sister's scarf before leaving the house. How Hazel would line up her shoes beside the door without being asked. But what stayed with him, what kept catching him off guard, was the way Lily used her hands. She would brush Hazel's hair back behind her ear with a tenderness that mirrored Evelyn's exactly. The same motion, the same care. One evening, as she stirred soup in the pot, Owen had to turn away because the way she held the wooden spoon tilted at a perfect angle. Right hand anchored at the hip was something Evelyn used to do without thinking. It wasn't mimicry. It was memory, buried deep and unconscious, passed down like breath. That night when Lily offered to help fold laundry, Owen watched her quietly. She folded each towel into thirds and stacked them in perfect symmetry, just like Evelyn had taught him years ago when they moved into the cabin. He cleared his throat, trying to shake off the weight behind his ribs. "You do that, just like someone I used to know." Lily looked up. Was it her, the lady in the picture frame? He blinked. "You saw the photo in the hallway," Lily said softly. "She looks like my mom." Owen sat down across from her, the folded towels between them. That was Evelyn. She was my wife, Hazel says she's like a ghost in this house, Lily whispered. But a nice ghost, like she left her heart here. Owen swallowed. I think maybe she did. The next morning, they drove into town for groceries. Owen had always avoided Saturdays at the store. Too many people, too much noise. But he wanted the girls to feel normal. He even let Hazel pick the cereal, which resulted in a neon pink box with a cartoon owl that looked like it was having a nervous breakdown. As they waited at the register, an older woman behind them smiled at the girls. Your granddaughters, she asked, nodding toward Owen. No, he said without hesitation. But their family. He wasn't sure where the words came from, but when he saw the girls beam Hazel holding tight to his jacket sleeve, he knew they were true. That afternoon, after groceries were put away and the girls were upstairs drawing, Owen sat on the porch steps with a worn envelope in his hand. It had been tucked into the back of Evelyn's final journal, one he hadn't been able to open until now. Inside was a letter, addressed simply, to the one who keeps listening. It wasn't long, just a few lines in Evelyn's elegant handwriting. If you're reading this, then someone found the song. That means they're still out there. Maybe Claire. Maybe her girls. Maybe someone else who understands what it's like to lose something and keep waiting. Don't stop listening, Owen. The music will always bring them home. He closed his eyes and let the wind sweep over him, brushing snow dust from the railing. Evelyn had always believed that music was more than sound, that it was memory prayer connection. Now he was starting to believe it too. That evening, Lily approached him while Hazel napped on the couch. Can I ask something? She said, quiet and serious. Of course. Do you think, if my mom's still alive, she remembers us? Owen felt the weight of the question. How do you answer that for a child? With honesty, with hope. I think if your mom is anything like Evelyn, he said slowly, then she's never stopped thinking about you. Not for a single day. Lily nodded, but her eyes were misted. And if she's forgotten things, he added, then we'll help her remember. That's what music is for. And family. She stepped forward, then unsteady, and wrapped her arms around him. Owen hesitated only for a second before he returned the embrace, holding her like she'd been his all along. You're not like other grown-ups, she whispered. He smiled into her hair. Neither are you. That night, Owen lit the fireplace and watched the flames dance behind the grate. Hazel slept, curled up on the recliner, Lily nestled in the corner with a book. The house didn't feel quiet the way it used to. It felt full. He got up, pulled out Evelyn's old map of Bitterroot Lake from a box in the closet. The lake sat just an hour northwest of town. Dotted along its edges were old cabins, most abandoned, some used only during the summers. He traced a finger along the shoreline and stopped at a spot marked faintly in pencil. Winters 1988. Claire had stayed there once, as a teenager. It was a long shot, but it was something. He folded the map carefully and set it on the kitchen table. Hazel stirred, then blinked open her eyes. Are we going to find her? She asked drowsily. Owen crossed the room and knelt beside her. Yes, he said, simply. We are. The air around Bitterroot Lake held a kind of stillness that felt older than the trees. The surface of the water shimmered beneath a pale winter sun, silent and untouched, like it remembered every secret ever whispered to its banks. Owen parked the truck near the edge of the forest trail. The girls sat in the back seat, bundled in coats and scarves. He turned to face them, holding up the map Evelyn had marked decades ago. This might be nothing, he said. The place could be empty, or boarded up. Or it won't be, Hazel said, interrupting. Owen raised an eyebrow. You're that sure? Hazel nodded. I dreamed about it. Beside her, Lily simply gave a small nod, eyes steady. If she's there, we should be the ones to find her. So they started walking. The trail wound through snow-dusted pine trees, the scent of frozen sap thick in the air. Owen carried a small pack, hot chocolate in a thermos, some sandwiches, and the envelope Evelyn had left behind. The girls trudged along beside him, small but determined. After 20 minutes, they found it. A cabin, weathered, worn, and leaning slightly to one side, stood at the top of a ridge overlooking the lake. The shutters hung crookedly. The front porch sagged. But there was smoke curling from the chimney. Someone was home. Hazel reached for Owen's hand. He squeezed it gently. He climbed the porch steps slowly and knocked. Once. Twice. Silence. Then shuffling. The sound of a latch being drawn. The door cracked open an inch. A woman appeared. Pale. Thin. Hair in a loose gray braid. Her face was half-shadowed, but Owen knew it was Claire. He felt it in the pit of his stomach, in the back of his throat, in the ache behind his ribs where Evelyn still lived. "Claire," he said. The woman's eyes flickered. "Who are you?" "My name is Owen Callahan. I was married to Evelyn." She blinked slowly. For a second, it seemed like nothing registered. Then her voice cracked. "Evelyn!" The door opened a little wider. Hazel and Lily stepped forward into the light. Claire gasped. One hand flew to her chest. Her knees buckled slightly. "Girls," she whispered. "No. No, that's not. That can't be right." "It is," Lily said softly. "We came to find you." Claire reached out, trembling. She looked like she wanted to believe but didn't know how. Inside the cabin was sparse but warm. A wood stove crackled in the corner. On the mantel sat a single photo, Claire and Evelyn, as children barefoot in the grass, arms looped together. Claire stared at the girls as though seeing ghosts. Her hand shook as she poured water into mugs. "I thought I was protecting them," she said. Finally, her voice dry like fallen leaves. "From their father, from what I'd become." Owen listened quiet and still. "I ran," she continued. "We lived off the grid for a few years, moved from place to place. But one night, I crashed the car. I woke up in a hospital. Couldn't remember where we were, where they were. I thought I left them somewhere safe. But after that, my mind just folded in." Hazel moved closer. "You didn't lose us. We found you." Claire choked on a sob. "I didn't deserve that." Owen leaned forward. "Maybe not. But they do. And they need you to come back." She shook her head. "What would I even say in court? I have no proof. No income, no home anyone would approve of." "You don't have to do it alone," he said. Claire looked up. Her eyes were wet, fragile. "Why would you help me?" Owen exhaled slowly. "Because you're Evelyn's sister. Because she believed you'd come back. And because, when I look at them, I see the parts of her I thought I'd lost forever." Claire closed her eyes, then reached out and gently touched Hazel's cheek, as though afraid the child would disappear. Back at the cabin that night, Owen tucked the girls into bed, while Claire sat beside the fire, lost in thought. Later, she joined him at the table, where Evelyn's old journal lay open between them. "I found these letters Owen said weeks ago. She wrote them to you. Never sent them." Claire reached out, fingers shaking, and began to read. "Dear Claire, if you're reading this, then you're still alive. I never stopped hoping for that. Not for a single day. Music has always been your compass. So if you ever feel lost, follow the melody home. Owen knows the way. Love, Evelyn." Tears slid down Claire's cheeks. "She never gave up on me," she whispered. "No," Owen said. "She never would have." Claire looked at him then. Really looked. "Neither did you." He shook his head. "I gave up a lot after she died, but maybe not everything." She reached across the table, her hand brushing his. Neither of them said anything more. They didn't need to. In the space between them, filled with grief, forgiveness, and something tender beginning to grow, a fire rekindled. Small, steady, and warm. The next morning dawned pale and silent, the way only winter mornings can be soft. Light diffused through frost-laced windows, the lake outside frozen in stillness. Inside the cabin, Claire sat wrapped in Evelyn's old flannel blanket, as if warmth alone could hold together the broken timelines of her life. She stared into her tea, as though it might reveal answers she'd misplaced long ago. Owen watched her from the kitchen, his movements quiet and deliberate. He scrambled eggs, sliced toast, and made coffee strong enough to burn the fog from both their minds. The girls were still asleep upstairs, curled together like puppies. He placed a plate in front of her. Claire blinked. "I'm not sure I remember how to eat with other people." "You start by not apologizing," Owen said with a soft smile. She tried. The fork trembled in her hand, but she didn't set it down. "Do you know the worst part?" she asked. "It wasn't forgetting them. It was realizing I'd forgotten them." Owen sat across from her. "What do you mean?" "There was a day maybe 6 months ago when a woman from a local church brought me a coat. It had a music note stitched inside the lining. I didn't remember why it made me cry." She paused, "until I met them again." Owen said nothing, just waited. Claire had spent years navigating a darkness he couldn't begin to imagine. Now she was feeling her way back into the light, and he knew better than to rush her. "I thought I was protecting them by disappearing," she continued. "But I ended up erasing myself. The girls, I wasn't even sure they were real. I started thinking I made them up figments from a life I wanted, but never had." "You didn't make them up," Owen said gently. "They're real. They're here. And they never stopped being yours." Claire's eyes filled again, but she didn't look away this time. "Do you think they can forgive me?" "They already have." Later that morning, Owen sat down with the girls in front of the fire, while Claire stayed in the kitchen, slowly paging through Evelyn's journals. She didn't speak much, but her expression was shifting, less hollow, more present. "Did she used to laugh a lot?" Hazel asked, pulling her knees up to her chest. "Your mom?" Owen asked. Hazel nodded. "Yeah," he said. Claire had this laugh that made everyone in the room turn. She laughed like she knew something funny was hiding just behind whatever you were worried about. Hazel smiled. "I remember it. Lily was quieter. She used to sing to us, but I always thought it was Evelyn's voice in my dreams." In a way, Owen said it probably was. That afternoon, they all walked down to the lake together. The ice cracked softly beneath their boots, not enough to be dangerous, just enough to remind them that everything, even water, can harden when left alone. Too long. Claire looked out across the lake, arms wrapped around her body like armor. "This place used to be magic to me. When Evelyn and I were little, we'd make up songs about what lived under the water. Dragons, kingdoms, lost treasure." "What do you see now?" Owen asked. Claire didn't answer right away. Then she turned her voice barely more than breath. "A way back." They spent the rest of the afternoon cleaning the cabin, sweeping out cobwebs, dusting shelves, shaking out old quilts. The girls treated it like an adventure, laughing as they found ancient coloring books, half-melted candles, even an unopened box of chocolate from 2001. Owen found himself watching Claire more than he meant to, not just out of concern, but something more tender. There was a quiet elegance in the way she moved now, as though every step was a rediscovery. Once, when they both reached for the same broom, their hands touched. Claire didn't pull away. That evening after dinner, they gathered around the fire. Owen brought out his guitar, an old companion with more wear than polish, and began strumming softly. "You still play?" Claire asked. "Sometimes," he said. It's harder when the house is quiet. She nodded, then leaned forward. Do you know Evelyn's lullaby? The one with no end? Owen smiled. I know most of it. I've been thinking about how to finish it. Claire sat back, thoughtful. Maybe it doesn't need an ending. Maybe it just needs someone to carry it forward. He looked at her, and in that moment he saw not just the woman who had been lost, but the one Evelyn had loved fiercely and unconditionally. You should come back with us, he said gently. Claire didn't respond right away. The girls were on the rug giggling over a board game. Firelight danced across their faces. I don't know if I can be the mother they need, she whispered. You already are, Owen said. You just forgot for a while. Claire's eyes shimmered. And if I forget again? Then we'll remind you, Owen said. Every single day if we have to. When the girls had gone to bed, Claire lingered by the fire. Owen brought her tea, and they sat for a long while in companionable silence. I don't know how to thank you, she said finally. You don't have to. She turned toward him. But I want to. He met her eyes steady and quiet. Then, come home. Claire didn't answer with words. Instead, she leaned forward, rested her head gently on his shoulder, and whispered, I'm ready. For the first time in a long time, Owen didn't feel like a man carrying grief. He felt like a man carrying someone home. The warmth of the cabin faded into the chill of courtrooms and paperwork, as swiftly as winter sunlight slips behind clouds. Back in Butte, Owen stood on the courthouse steps with Claire at his side. She wore a navy coat borrowed from Marta, the child protection officer, and a knitted scarf Hazel had insisted she take. Her face was calm, but her hands trembled slightly in the cold. Inside the hearing room was smaller than Owen expected, more intimate, but no less daunting. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly. Folded flags stood in the corners. A judge in her 60s presided with a stern but tired expression that spoke of years in service of hearing too many stories that began with they were just children. Marta met them near the entrance with a clipboard and eyes that betrayed more emotion than her tone. The state has reviewed the request, she said quietly. You've both been designated as kinship caregivers. That means the girls are staying with you temporarily until we determine long-term custody. Claire nodded, her face unreadable. But there's another petition on file, Marta added. From a couple named Leonard and Maureen Blackwell. Owen stiffened. Who are they? They're Claire's estranged in-laws, Marta said carefully. From her late husband's side. Wealthy, high-profile donors in Billings. They're filing for permanent guardianship. Claire's mouth opened slightly, as if trying to recall something far away. I thought they never wanted anything to do with us, she whispered. They do now, Marta replied grimly. They've hired legal representation. Be prepared. The girls weren't allowed inside during the hearing, so Owen sat with Claire alone at the respondents' table, while the judge called the room to order. Across from them, Leonard and Maureen Blackwell looked exactly as expected, impeccably dressed, emotionally distant, with a young attorney who wore a suit like it was his second skin. Claire kept her eyes on her folded hands. Your Honor. The attorney began, my client's wish only to provide the children with a secure, stable future. They have a multi-bedroom estate trust funds and access to the finest schools. Their motivation is not personal gain. It is the welfare of the children whose current guardianship is tenuous at best. Owen leaned slightly forward, jaw tightening. The judge turned to Claire. Ms. Winters, would you like to respond? Claire swallowed. Her voice was steady but quiet. I made mistakes. I disappeared when I should have stayed. I let fear and illness convince me I wasn't good enough to raise them. But I never stopped loving them. And I never will. Leonard Blackwell raised a hand. Your Honor, The woman you see before you is not well. She has no income, no career, no ability to support 2 children. Our son made poor choices. Yes, but these girls are still our family." Owen stood. "May I speak?" The judge glanced at him. "You're not a legal guardian, Mr. Callahan." "No, ma'am," Owen said. "But I'm family too. My late wife was Claire's sister, and I've been raising these girls for weeks, feeding them, comforting them, listening when they woke up crying in the night. Not because I had to, but because they needed someone." The room went quiet. "I'm not rich," he continued. "I don't have private schools or tennis courts or an inheritance. But I have a home. I have a heart that never closed even when I wanted it to. And those girls know that. They chose us." Claire looked at him, then really looked like the words were giving her strength she hadn't dared reach for. "I can't erase the years I lost," she said. "But I can show them that love doesn't disappear just because someone gets lost. It just waits." The judge recessed for 10 minutes before returning with her decision. "The court acknowledges the Blackwells' resources and concern for the children," she said. "However, custody is not only about wealth or bloodlines. It is about presence, intention, continuity of care." She looked directly at Owen and Claire. This court recognizes the unique situation before it. In light of familial ties, consistent support, and the strong bond between the children and their current caregivers, I hereby grant Claire Winters and Owen Callahan joint legal guardianship of Lily and Hazel Winters, effective immediately. Claire gasped. Owen's hand found hers beneath the table. Maureen Blackwell stood in protest, but the judge had already dismissed the room. Outside the courthouse, snow had begun to fall. Again, light scattered flakes, swirling like ash. The girls came running across the sidewalk as soon as they saw Owen and Claire exit. Hazel leapt into her mother's arms. Lily flung herself into Owen's chest. "Did we win, Lily?" asked her voice muffled in his coat. Owen smiled, tightening his hold. "We did." Claire knelt down, brushing hair from Hazel's face, her hands still shaking from the adrenaline. "You're coming home, honey. We're going home, all of us." Marta walked past with a rare grin. "You two just made a miracle." That evening, Owen lit the fireplace again. The girls sang softly in the corner, while Claire curled up on the couch, eyes closed, but awake, the flicker of flames dancing on her cheeks. "I didn't think they'd choose us," she said quietly. "They didn't," Owen replied. "The girls did." Claire looked at him, her voice a whisper. "Thank you for standing beside me." "I wasn't beside you," he said. "I was with you." She reached out and took his hand. It felt easy now. Natural. In that moment, they weren't survivors. They were a family. The official custody hearing took place 2 weeks later in the larger courtroom on the 2nd floor of the Butte County Courthouse. The wooden benches were polished, the walls lined with somber oil portraits of long-retired judges. The room held a hush, as if history itself demanded silence. This time, the girls were allowed to attend. Owen sat beside Claire at the respondents' table, his hand resting quietly on a folded envelope, Evelyn's final letter, which the judge had agreed to accept as supporting testimony. The girls sat just behind them, with Marta dressed in matching dark blue cardigans and nervous determination. Across the aisle, the Blackwells were present again. Maureen looked even more composed than before, but colder. Somehow her eyes never quite landing on the children. Leonard whispered something to their attorney, who adjusted his tie and rose to begin. "Your Honor, we respect your prior ruling, but we urge reconsideration." The young attorney began smoothly. "Our clients seek not to erase the children's history, but to ensure their future." Claire Winters. While biologically the mother has a well-documented history of instability and mental health deterioration, Mr. Callahan, though clearly devoted, is not a blood relative to the children. Owen could feel Claire tense beside him, her spine straightening, her hands folded in her lap like pressed paper. The attorney continued. We propose a stable home environment, private education, and the financial resources to provide for every possible need of the children. The judge turned her gaze toward Claire. Ms. Winters, do you have a response to these concerns? Claire stood slowly. She had chosen to speak for herself. No lawyer, no script, only her own voice. When she did speak, it was quiet, but resonant. Your Honor, everything they said about me was true. I did fall apart. I did disappear. But what they left out, what matters most, is that I came back. Not because I had to, because I chose to. Because my daughters, they are not a mistake to erase or a burden to pass on. They are the only part of me that ever made sense. She paused, glanced behind her at the girls. I forgot who I was for a while. But they remembered. They called me home. The judge studied her, then turned to Owen. Mr. Callahan. Owen rose, nodded once to the bench. Your Honor, I don't claim to have all the answers. I'm not rich. I'm not the kind of man who wins custody cases. But I know what it means to stay. Through grief, through uncertainty, through every single hard day that doesn't come with a promise of better ones. He glanced toward Claire, then toward the girls. I didn't rescue them. They rescued me. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Before the judge could respond, Lily stood up. She was small, barely eye level to the top of the wooden bench, where Marta sat beside her. But her voice carried. Your Honor, can I say something? The judge hesitated, then nodded. You may. Lily stepped forward. Her shoes squeaked slightly on the tile. Hazel followed, clutching her hand. We don't want to go with the other people, Lily said clearly. They don't know our songs, or how we like our cereal, or what it means when Hazel has a bad dream. The courtroom was utterly still. Hazel looked up. Mom sings again, and Mr. Owen plays guitar, and he knows how to listen without talking. Lily added, they made a space for us, not just in their house, in their life. Then she reached into her cardigan pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She handed it to the judge. The judge unfolded it carefully. A drawing, childlike and earnest, of the four of them standing together hand in hand. Above them in crayon were the words, "This is where we belong." The judge looked down at them for a long, long moment. Then she nodded once. I believe you do. When the gavel came down, Claire clutched her face in both hands and wept openly. Owen reached for her, and she fell into him, shaking, breathless with relief. The judge spoke again. Let the record reflect full legal guardianship is granted to Ms. Claire Winters and Mr. Owen Callahan. This court commends the children's bravery and the caregiver's commitment. Marta dabbed at her eyes discreetly behind her clipboard. Outside, the snow had started again, but softer this time, like confetti falling from a winter sky. The courthouse steps seemed less steep as they descended them together, a slow procession of second chances. Lily and Hazel danced ahead, giggling. Claire walked beside Owen, her arm brushing his. You know, she said, voice light despite the tears still in her eyes, I never thought I'd be the kind of person who won in court. You didn't, he replied. They did. You just showed up for them. She smiled. And you? I just held the line. Claire slipped her hand into his. This time, there was no hesitation, no tremor. I think I want to keep showing up, she said. He looked down at her, his voice low and sure. Then we'll do it together. That evening back home, the girls insisted on baking cookies. Owen burned the first batch, and Hazel declared it crispy caramel style. Claire laughed for the first time in years, a real ringing laugh that made the windows feel warmer. Later, after bedtime stories and too many marshmallows in the cocoa, Owen found Claire sitting at the piano. She touched the keys softly, uncertain at first, then with growing confidence. "I remember more of it," she said. The song. Claire nodded. "I think Evelyn left it for all of us to finish." Owen picked up his guitar and sat beside her. Together they played tentative notes, a shared melody, imperfect but beautiful. The lullaby Evelyn never finished was no longer just hers. It belonged to the family she had helped create. By mid-March, the snow began to retreat in slow, uneven patches, revealing the dark, stubborn soil beneath. The days grew longer, birds returned to perch on the fence rails, and Owen's cabin transformed from a place of survival into a place of living. It happened quietly. Mornings began with laughter in the kitchen and mismatched socks on the floor. Hazel learned how to beat Owen at Go Fish. Lily memorized every label in the spice rack and made it her mission to fix the terrible way he stored cinnamon. Claire moved through the house with increasing steadiness. She laughed more easily, sang while sweeping, and sometimes hummed without realizing it. At night, she no longer needed to check twice that the girls were still breathing only once. The house was full again. But it was more than that. It was whole. One Saturday afternoon, Claire came home from town holding a battered instrument case. "What's this?" Owen asked, wiping flour from his hands. She set the case on the kitchen table and opened it. Inside was a violin. The wood was scratched, the bow frayed, but it had a quiet dignity to it, like something that had lived through hardship and kept its voice. "I found it at a thrift store," she said. "It reminded me of the one Evelyn and I used to fight over when we were kids." He smiled. "I never pictured you as the violinist in the family." "She wasn't either," Claire said. "She was always better, but I was louder." That night after the girls went to bed, Claire tried to tune the violin. The sound was rough at first, sliding, screeching unsure. But Owen sat across from her anyway, his guitar on his lap, ready to follow wherever she led. By the third song, the notes softened. They found each other in rhythm old wounds, hidden inside the melody, now stitched into something new. A week later, Marta returned for her final check-in. She sat in the same chair by the window, flipping through forms, while Hazel recited the names of every type of bird they'd spotted from the porch. Lily brought out her sketchbook, proudly showing off a portrait of the entire family, including Marta, drawn with oversized glasses and a sunflower pin. "Well," Marta said, setting her clipboard down. "I think we're finished." Claire blinked. "Finished? Your case is closed, permanently," Marta said with a warm smile. "No more monthly visits, no more reviews. You're officially a legal family in the eyes of the state." Owen looked at Claire. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Hazel said, "Does that mean we're forever?" Marta nodded. "Yes, forever." Hazel turned and threw herself into Claire's lap, arms tight around her waist. Lily did the same with Owen. Claire met Owen's eyes across the room. No words passed between them, just a shared breath, a silent recognition of everything it had taken to arrive here. Spring pushed its way into April with stubborn optimism. The family planted flowers in the backyard, sunflowers, wild lavender, and one small dogwood tree in honor of Evelyn. Owen built a raised garden bed, and the girls insisted on growing carrots just to see how tall they got underground. One Sunday after church and blueberry pancakes, Claire and Owen sat on the porch swing, watching the girls draw chalk art on the steps. A soft breeze moved through the pine trees. "They're different now," Claire said. "Lighter." "They're safe," Owen replied. Claire turned toward him, brushing a hair behind her ear. "I wasn't sure I'd ever feel safe again." "You are," he said, simply. "You're not running anymore." Claire nodded. "Neither are you." He looked down. "I guess I stopped when they showed up in that alley." "No," she said softly. "You stopped when you chose to open the door." Owen glanced at her hand resting near his, and for the first time reached for it without hesitation. "I never thought life would bring me here," she whispered. "You didn't come here, Claire," he said. "You belonged here." That evening, Lily and Hazel begged for a family concert in the living room. Owen pulled out his guitar, Claire rosined the old bow, and the girls stood proudly with plastic maracas and a tambourine from the local thrift store. They played Evelyn's lullaby, now fuller, brighter, complete. It had no title, only feeling, and it filled the cabin like light flooding into an old barn, illuminating corners, once forgotten dust rising like holy smoke. Afterward, the girls curled on the couch, sleepy but grinning. Owen placed the guitar gently back in its stand. "I think she would have liked this," he said. Claire touched the violin's strings. She would have called it a miracle. "Maybe it is," he said. "A quiet one." Claire looked at him. Her eyes were no longer haunted. "Then let's protect it. Whatever this is. We will," he promised. "Every single day." She leaned over and rested her head on his shoulder, and Owen let his cheek rest lightly on her hair. There was no fanfare, no declarations, just peace. The kind that comes after storms, the kind that stays. The spring music recital at Butte Community Hall wasn't a grand affair. The ceiling fans creaked, the folding chairs didn't quite line up, and the stage lights buzzed louder than they should have. But for Owen, Claire, Lily, and Hazel, it might as well have been Carnegie Hall. The girls had been rehearsing for weeks. Hazel, nervous but excited, was set to sing a short solo. Lily would play the first part of a duet on the piano, her first time performing in front of strangers. And then, at the very end of the program, Owen and Claire would debut Evelyn's lullaby. Completed. Claire had titled it, quietly, almost to herself, "The Song That Found Its Ending." That morning, as the family loaded into the truck, Claire wore a soft yellow dress Owen had never seen before. It had belonged to Evelyn, packed away in a cedar chest for years. The fabric caught the sunlight like a held breath. "You sure?" Owen asked gently. She nodded. "It feels like the right day to carry her with me." The girls sat in the back seat, giggling over their maracas and tapping rhythms against their knees. The excitement wasn't just about performing, it was about being seen. Fully, joyfully, unapologetically seen. Inside the community hall, the audience shuffled in. Neighbors, church friends, teachers, retired miners, and young parents with toddlers in tow. The room smelled of dust floor polish and fresh baked brownies from the bake sale table. Marta was there too, sitting in the third row with a sunflower pin on her lapel and a tissue already in hand. Hazel went first. She stepped nervously to the microphone, gripping it like it might float away. Owen held his breath as she opened her mouth. Her voice was small at first, but true, and by the third line it steadied. The song was simple about springtime and bluebirds, but she sang it with a sincerity that hushed the room. When she finished, the applause was soft and reverent, like everyone understood the courage it took to stand there. Then came Lily. She climbed onto the piano bench with the calm of a child who had stared down harder things than stage fright. Her fingers trembled on the first note, but only briefly. Then the melody took over. She played Evelyn's opening, those delicate, haunting measures that once drifted like a ghost through their cabin. Claire joined on the violin by the second stanza, and the sound they created together wasn't perfect. It was alive. Owen sat beside them with his guitar. He didn't rush. He didn't try to impress. He simply followed. And when the final verse came, the one Claire had written just weeks before, they all paused for half a beat. Long enough for silence to fall over the crowd like snow. Then Owen sang. No words. Just a soft hum woven between Claire's bow and Lily's keys, a harmony Evelyn might have imagined but never reached. And in that moment, the song ended, not with finality, but with peace. When the applause came, it wasn't thunderous. It was something better. It was full. People stood. Marta dabbed her cheeks. An elderly woman in the front row clutched her chest and whispered, "My God, it's beautiful." One by one, neighbors rose from their seats, not for spectacle, but for reverence, for love, for what it meant to finish something born in grief and let it become joy. Hazel jumped into Owen's arms backstage. Lily wrapped her arms around Claire's waist and said, "Mom, we did it." Claire kissed the crown of her daughter's head. "Yes, baby. We really did." That night, back at the cabin, they built a small fire in the backyard pit. The sky was clear stars, crisp against the darkness. The dogwood tree they'd planted for Evelyn swayed gently in the breeze, its young leaves rustling like quiet applause. They sat around the fire in blankets, sipping cocoa. The girls eventually dozed off, Hazel on Owen's lap, Lily resting against Claire's shoulder. "I used to think the lullaby didn't end because Evelyn never got the chance," Claire said softly. Owen looked into the fire. Maybe she just knew it wasn't her ending to write. Claire reached out and took his hand. "Do you think she'd be proud of us?" He nodded. "She already is." Claire was silent for a moment. Then she leaned in, her voice quiet and sure. "You know, this doesn't have to be temporary. You and me." This, she gestured around them, could be more. Owen turned toward her, eyes steady. "I don't want temporary," she smiled. "Good." They sat like that in the hush between stars and firelight until the embers burned low. In the weeks that followed, the lullaby spread. Marta asked for a recording. The local elementary school requested to use it for their end-of-year slideshow. Someone at church hummed it during communion. But for Owen and Claire, its true meaning stayed sacred. Not a song of sorrow, but of survival. Of found things. Of second chances. Summer settled over Montana like a sigh. Long golden evenings, wild flowers blooming in the ditches, and the scent of pine carried on warm wind. At Owen's cabin, life no longer felt like something to be endured, but something being built day by day. The house was no longer quiet. It rang with off-key singing from the kitchen, the soft plunk of Hazel's growing piano skills, and the rustle of pages as Lily devoured books far beyond her age. Claire had painted the living room a warm wheat color, and Owen had finally repaired the screen door that had been squeaking since 2014. Everything had changed, and yet it felt like it had always been this way. One Sunday afternoon, while Claire took the girls to the farmer's market, Owen stayed back to sand the porch railings. He worked with steady hands rhythmically, the smell of sawdust mingling with sun-warmed earth. As he reached for another strip of sandpaper, something fluttered from beneath the floorboard, a yellowed envelope. He frowned and crouched. It had Evelyn's handwriting on it. "For the day you know you're not alone." His breath caught. Hands trembling slightly, he sat on the step and opened it. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, the edges fraying, the ink slightly faded. "My love. If you're reading this, then you found your way back to something I always believed you would. You were never meant to stay broken. Maybe you thought music left when I did. But music never leaves, it lingers. It waits. It becomes part of the people you choose to love next. And when you love them, really love them, the song begins again. So go ahead. Finish it. Not because it has to end, but because it deserves to. I'm proud of you. I never stopped being proud of you. Love, always E." Owen didn't cry. Not in the way he had at Evelyn's funeral, alone in the truck with both fists clenched against the steering wheel. This was different. He sat quietly as tears slid down his cheeks, not of grief, but of release. Of forgiveness he hadn't known he still needed. That night after dinner, the family gathered in the backyard under strings of soft yellow lights, Owen and the girls had hung across the porch. A few neighbors had stopped by, Marta among them, with her usual sunflower pin and homemade peach pie. Hazel played a short piece on the violin she'd just started learning. It was scratchy and uncertain, but everyone clapped as if she were the next Itzhak Perlman. Lily read a poem she had written, titled "The House That Found Its Song." Then came silence, the kind that feels full instead of empty. Owen stood and cleared his throat. "There's one more thing," he said. Claire looked up, curious. He walked over, reached into his guitar case, and pulled out a small box, simple square, wrapped in the kind of deep red velvet that Evelyn used to say makes things feel sacred. Claire's hand flew to her mouth. Owen knelt. The crowd gasped softly, but Owen's eyes never left hers. "This family started in the middle of a storm," he said, his voice low and steady. "But you've been the calm that let us rebuild. I never planned to love again. I never thought I could. But I do. I love you, Claire. I love the life we've made, and the music we share, and the girls who pulled us both back into the world." He opened the box. Inside was a simple gold band, elegant, unpretentious. A match to Evelyn's resting now in the small wooden box, beside the family photo on the mantel. "Marry me," Owen said. "Not because we need to start over, but because I want to continue with you." Claire didn't speak. She simply stepped forward, tears on her cheeks, and whispered, "Yes." The applause that followed wasn't wild. It was warm, familiar, homegrown. Hazel squealed. Lily threw both hands in the air. Marta wiped her eyes with a napkin that had once held a slice of pie. In the weeks that followed, life didn't become perfect. There were still burnt toast mornings, school projects forgotten until the last minute, and laundry that multiplied like rabbits. Claire struggled sometimes with the pressure, with the memories that didn't always return in full. Owen had moments of stillness that frightened him, not with silence, but with the weight of how much he had to lose again. But every night ended with music, a new lullaby, one that Hazel hummed as she brushed her teeth, one that Lily played with small, confident hands, one that Claire improvised quietly while Owen tuned the guitar beside her. On the first day of fall, just as the leaves began to turn gold, they performed Evelyn's lullaby one final time, this time at home, for no audience but each other. Claire played. Owen sang. The girls danced barefoot in the grass, the sky above glowing with that low golden hue that only late afternoon ever finds. And when the last note hung in the air, soft, suspended, no one clapped. No one needed to. Because some endings don't need applause. Some just need to linger. Before you go, I'd love to know. Where are you watching from? Is it a quiet town, like the one in our story, or somewhere far, far away? Share with us in the comments below. We read every word, and your stories truly matter here. If this story touched your heart, even just a little, I invite you to subscribe. There's more where this came from. Stories of love, kindness, and the quiet miracles that still happen every day. Thank you for spending time with us today. It means more than you know. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other.